Recently, we passed the 30th anniversary of the Oklahoma City bombing, in which Timothy McVeigh drove a truck up to the Murrah Federal Building and set off a bomb, killing 168 people. It's still the most deadly domestic terror attack in U.S. history. So you might think that our lovely and caring U.S. government would want to tell us the truth about it. But nah, they have more important things to do, like make sure no people of color get good jobs. That's not fair. Like make sure no people of color without the first name Cash get good jobs. The Oklahoma City bombing is one of the most investigated and reported on attacks in American history. And yet, there's roughly 10 billion things we aren't being told. Let's get into it. We're told McVeigh's only accomplice was Terry Nichols, who was an old military buddy of McVeigh's. Oh, yeah, I should mention here that this horror show was, of course, carried out by U.S. military veterans. In fact, U.S. military service is the strongest predictor of carrying out extremist violence. In the years 1990 to 2022, 170 individuals with U.S. military backgrounds plotted 144 individual mass casualty terrorist attacks inside the United States. Basically, when you hear a report about a domestic terror attack, if you ask whether the perpetrator was ex-military, it's like asking whether they were angry. It's kind of a given. It's like asking whether that new hit drama on CBS is propaganda. Of course it is, you nitwit. They're all propaganda. Even Paw Patrol is propaganda. Anyway, we're told Terry Nichols was McVeigh's only accomplice, and he was not in Oklahoma City on the day of the bombing. So that means the only person who should have been in the van that morning is McVeigh. But as The Guardian reported 10 years ago, we don't know the identities of the other people seen with McVeigh on the morning of the bombing, only that more than 20 eyewitnesses were unanimous in telling the FBI he was not alone. More than 20 eyewitnesses. Can eyewitnesses be wrong? Absolutely. But not normally the difference between one person and two people. They can handle that. That a 3-year-old can handle while pooping his pants. And this jives with the fact that there was an FBI sketch of a John Doe number 2 that led to one of the largest nationwide manhunts in U.S. history. Tens of thousands of tips came into the FBI and not one pregnancy. Then eventually, after 2 years, the FBI said the suspect was an error. Federal officials have officially acknowledged that the circulation of a sketch of John Doe number 2 was based on a mistake by a witness who remembered the wrong person. A mistake by a witness? I remember that manhunt. They had us looking everywhere, under our beds, in garages, inside washing machines. I got a colonoscopy, just in case. We were all losing our minds. We couldn't work. We couldn't love people. We couldn't even appreciate a nice day anymore. We were just looking for John Doe number 2. That was all that was in our brains. And now they say, oh, the dude never existed. The only time I've been angrier than that was when the medical community told us CPR no longer required the mouth-to-mouth part. After we'd already been tongue blasting corpses for 50 years? Make up your minds. Anyway, like I said, every single person who saw Timothy McVeigh the morning of the bombing saw someone with him. And then there's the fact that an unidentified leg was found in the rubble after the explosion. And they know from DNA testing that it didn't belong to any of the people who died in the blast. What? You don't want to follow up on that, U.S. government? You don't want to 23andMe that shit? You aren't even trying. Or how about Terry Nichols himself? What does he have to say?
In 2005, Nichols told them, quote, he knew the identity of John Doe number 2, but refused to reveal it. Nichols told investigators, quote, he feared for his and his family's well-being.
So Terry Nichols says there's a John Doe number 2, but the federal government says, go back to sleep, America. We'll take it from here. When have we ever lied to you? And that's just the beginning of the mysteries around this attack. Back to The Guardian, there is no ready explanation for a different Ryder truck seen by witnesses at McVeigh's motel in Kansas and at the state park where the bomb was assembled. No explanation for the other people seen inside McVeigh's motel room during the same period. No satisfactory explanation of the fact that 2 people were seen renting the bomb truck on the 17th of April. So, other than Terry Nichols, did McVeigh have any connection to some sort of group of people? Thanks for asking, Lee. That's a great question that the government is hoping no one ever looks into. There's a remote white supremacist community called Elohim City in eastern Oklahoma. McVeigh telephoned the community, Elohim City, and there are multiple indications he came visiting days later in search of recruits. This seems to imply McVeigh was either working with or at the direction of a white supremacist cult, far different than acting alone, one might say, if one understands numbers and words. What about the prosecutors who successfully got McVeigh sentenced to capital punishment? Do they believe McVeigh was alone on the day of the bombing? Larry Mackey, the number 2 prosecutor against McVeigh and the lead prosecutor against Nichols, said, "If you had said to our prosecution team, anybody in the room 100% confident that McVeigh was alone, raise your hand. We would have all kept our hands in our laps." So even they say the story we're supposed to believe about April 19th, 1995 is prime cut, free range, whiskey barrel aged, twice filtered, pure bullshit. On top of all that, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the ATF, had an office in that building, and yet none of them showed up to work that morning by 9 a.m. Yeah, they were just sleeping in late, still had on their footy pajamas, curled up with a cup of cocoa. Not unusual at all. The sponsor for this video is Chapter, a free Medicare navigation and advice service. So if you're 65 or older, or your parents are, Chapter can really help you understand the 24,000 plans. Yes, there's 24,000 with Medicare, Medicare Advantage, and Medigap. 96% of people who use Chapter return to use it the next year. Seniors have historically saved over $1,000 a year using Chapter. Also, Chapter has a near perfect reviews online by those who have used it, and it's got an A+ with the Better Business Bureau, and it's free. So check out if Chapter's right for you or your parents. You can either go to askchapter.org/camp, my last name, or call 757-349-8232. All this info will also be in the description of this video. And did I mention it's free? Man, I have so many questions. If only we had someone who's been studying and investigating the Oklahoma City bombing nonstop for the past 30 years. Put out multiple books and documentaries on the subject.
Kathy Sanders?
What, Gary?
What about Kathy Sanders?
Well, yeah, that would be great. I mean, she's the one who lost 2 grandchildren in the blast and has spent every spare second since investigating it. I mean, if we could find someone like that, I think
we have Kathy Sanders on the line right now.
What? Jesus, Gary, why didn't you tell me? All right, Kathy, hello. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Lee. It's good to be here with you.
Kathy, first of all, thanks for all your work on this. What you've done is amazing. I'm thinking it's fairly clear McVeigh was involved in something much larger. Can you tell us about that?
I went to Elohim City. I met with the ATF informant Carol Howe, who warned her handler in her reports that I have that these people are planning a bombing. In Jennifer McVeigh's confession to the FBI, most people don't know that she was granted immunity for ratting out her brother, but she says she was laundering $100 bills that came from bank robberies. And there's a group of bank robbers staying at Elohim City. The FBI dubbed them the Midwest bank robbers. Their funds from their robberies were going to finance terrorist activities. I've got a speeding ticket that McVeigh, a boy from New York City, gets outside the gates of Elohim City. McVeigh calls Elohim City 2 weeks before the bombing, 2 minutes after calling the Ryder Truck Company. He asked to speak to Andreas Strassmeyer. Strassmeyer was never interviewed in relationship to the bombing, and he was allowed to leave the country illegally. A year later, the FBI did a telephone interview with him. But I find that so strange because the FBI found it was important to talk to McVeigh's third grade school teacher. Wouldn't you want to know? Wouldn't you want to talk to Strassmeyer?
Yeah, and he had all kinds of military training and explosives training and was connected to these white supremacist groups. Anyway, if you add that up with the fact that over 20 eyewitnesses saw 2 people that morning, clearly this was more than just McVeigh.
I haven't talked about this before, so it'll be the first I've talked on this show. I've got a Secret Service document that was generated May 1st, 1995. It's 126 pages long, but the 2 paragraphs that are significant to me, the agent that's writing this report says, the security video shows the Ryder truck pulling up to the federal building and then pausing 7 to 10 seconds before it resuming into the slot in front of the building. The next paragraph that I've taken out, security videotapes from the area show the truck detonation 3 minutes and 6 seconds after the suspects, plural, exited the truck. To me, that's significant. And the trial judge put the 22 security camera videos that were around the building under seal. They're still under seal today. There's been an ongoing fight to try to get those videos released.
Yeah, so there's video, witnesses, and now Secret Service documents saying 2 people were in that truck. I wouldn't be surprised if there's drawings, painting, maybe a sculpture of more than one bomber. It's just ridiculous. Something else important is that there was another plot against the building, that same building, 12 years prior in 1983. The plot obviously never happened, but did the group who was plotting that have anything to do with McVeigh? He asks knowingly.
That's right. The FBI raided the CSA compound. That's the Covenant, the Sword, and Arm of the Lord.
Another white supremacist group.
Yes. And at the sedition trial of one of its members, it was brought out that these people were planning to blow up the Murrah building. And it was out of retaliation for the death of Gordon Call, one of their members. What's really odd then is Richard Snell, the one of the leaders of the CSA, the one that was on trial. He was executed in Arkansas on April 19th, 1995, the very day of the Murrah bombing.
The same day.
Same day. And the prison watch log notes that inmate Snell watched the coverage of the Oklahoma City bombing and he smiled and chuckled. And his spiritual advisor, Robert Millar, leader of Elohim City, was with him. And when Snell was executed, Millar took his body back and buried it at Elohim City.
So pretty clearly, tons of white supremacist involvement. But why would the government want to cover up the full plot unless either they just love protecting white supremacists, not that far-fetched if you know your U.S. history, or the government was somehow involved in the plot?
10 years after the bombing, Terry Nichols made known to me and to some others that there were some explosives hidden under his house. And the FBI did not find them when they searched the house. He wanted the box of explosives removed because he wanted to have independent forensic testing done on the box. He said it would prove that Roger Moore, who was Tim McVeigh's buddy, he followed him around at gun shows. There's a lot of history there, but it would prove that Roger Moore's fingerprints were on it and that he's the one that supplied the kinestick that was used as the detonator for the Oklahoma City bombing. And this was just the extra kinestick. But what's really interesting about that, I've learned that Roger Moore in the late 80s was working for the CIA on the Iran-Contra project.
Mm-hmm.
Then in the early 90s, Roger Moore was working for the FBI, and he was working on an operation they dubbed Operation Punch Out. And they were luring military men to sell stolen jet engines and military equipment to foreign governments. Well, it only makes sense to me that when that operation ended in the early 90s, that I don't see how Roger Moore just accidentally bumped into McVeigh at a gun show and they became buddies. McVeigh was staying at his house. There were letters read at trial from McVeigh and Moore to each other. There's just way more to it. And wouldn't that be awful if Moore was the government agent, that he supplied the detonators for the bomb?
It's unbelievable. And if a CIA or FBI connected person were in any way involved in the plot, that would kind of explain everything. It would explain why all the secrecy, why all the videos have been sealed, why all the witnesses have been ignored, and so much more. Well, thank you, Kathy, for joining me. And everyone should check out your new book, Shadows of Conspiracy, which just came out. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
So there you have it. The truth about the Oklahoma City bombing is far deeper than we've been told. It seems Timothy McVeigh ticked off several boxes of the most common U.S. domestic terrorists: white, male, former military, white supremacist, and often has connections to the FBI or CIA. The most innocent explanation is that the FBI or CIA have undercover people or informants in just about every extremist organization in the country. So when one succeeds at a terror attack, it's always going to have some FBI, CIA connection, whether they tried to stop it or not. Or the more sinister explanation is that those two organizations further these horrible plots because they find it useful, either to stop the plot and look like heroes or to allow the plot, keeping the American population scared and malleable, like warm Play-Doh. The malleable part, not the scared part. Play-Doh's not usually scared, unless it knows what I'm going to do to it. That was gross. Jesus, Lee. Why cover this story 30 years after the attack? Because I don't understand people who don't want the truth. It's the truth. You should want the truth. I can handle the truth. You, Jack Nicholson.